So, you heard that there's a new Metroid game? Yes. Now Dana has to go buy all the Metroid amiibo to play it on hard mode. There goes Dana's paycheck. I feel like the title, Metroid Samus Returns, almost has a dual meaning. While the game is undoubtedly a remake of the video game Metroid 2 The Return of Samus, I feel like it's a very superficial title. I feel like the real meaning of the title Samus Returns is that Samus Aran, as in Samus, the main heroine of the Metroid franchise, as in the Metroid franchise, is back. And I'm happy to say that Samus Returns has brought Samus back, and I hope that she is staying for a little while, because Metroid Samus Returns is the best 2D Metroid game since Super Metroid and the best Metroid game period since Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. Enjoying my review for what is, I think, one of the best 3DS games I have played. If you're a Metroid fan, you know that in the first Metroid game, Samus, the intergalactic bounty hunter, was commissioned by the Galactic Federation to go to the planet Zebes, which had been taken over by an evil supercomputer called Mother Brain, which was utilizing life-sucking parasites known as Metroids to do her ill will. Now, after defeating Mother Brain and escaping Zebes, Samus was commissioned by the Federation to wipe out these pesky little Metroids once and for all. To that end, she went to the Metroid's homeworld of SR388 and must eradicate the Metroids once and for all, everything from the smallest evolution right up to the Queen Metroid herself. Now, while the story is fairly simple and bare bones, it's still a fun plot and helps get you immersed in the game. And I myself would have personally liked just a little bit more lore and backstory, because I feel like the Metroid Prime games really did that a lot. That said, I do like the lengths that Nintendo went to tie it into its direct successor chronologically, Super Metroid, and even hints to things like Metroid Fusion a little bit. Overall, the story is good, but Metroid's always told its story more through its gameplay and atmosphere and locations rather than the narrative. And Metroid Samus Returns carries that torch very, very finely. Metroid Samus Returns is a beautiful game. It's one of the best looking games I've seen on a 3DS. Sure, there's some jaggies and whatnot, and sure, some of the textures aren't as crisp as they could be, but everything is so vibrant and colorful and beautifully designed that it almost feels like a 3D game at times. And I usually play with the 2D off, but I just love, the fact that this game visually really helps take this kind of genre and the Metroidvania formula and really updates it and brings it into the next generation. And this is one of the best Metroidvania games I've played in years. Visually speaking, the game is beautiful, and the soundtrack is also great. Now, the music itself is not the best in the series. It's definitely no Super Metroid or Metroid Prime. In fact, most of the memorable soundtracks are from Super Metroid or Metroid Prime, and they're simply remixed, with a few exceptions. The sound effects themselves, however, are stellar and fantastic. I love just the sounds of Samus' arm cannon, of the bombs and the power bombs when she's in morph form, of Samus' new melee attack, and the cackles and gaggles and just creepy sounds of the flora and fauna in the world of SR388. The sound design itself is truly spectacular and just adds so much to the atmosphere of Samus Returns. That said, while I like the music well enough, I think it's atmospheric, but it's just not catchy. The brilliant thing about Metroid music is that it's always been able to be both simultaneously, and it is a little bit of a bummer that they didn't step up their game a little bit in that department. Now, controlling Samus Aran is very simple and very fluid and very fun. You use the joystick to move Samus left and right. You press the B button to jump. You can aim in any direction now by holding the L button on the left-hand side of the shoulder button on the left-hand side of the 3DS. You can aim in all directions, which is fantastic, and you shoot with Y. You press the R button and hold it down and press Y to use your missiles. You can also hold down Y to use your charge beam. Now, if you know Metroid, you know Samus has a Morph Ball mode, and of course you can turn into a Morph Ball by either pressing down twice on the joystick or simply tapping the screen, but I prefer using the joystick. Now, this is very early in the game, so you're not going to see a lot of the power-ups quite yet. Now, the game also has an ion tank, which you simply press the command cross in either direction and press A to activate it. This will give you different abilities, like it can power up some of your charge shots, it can help you find places to bomb in the walls, and things of that ilk. Now, control-wise, the gameplay is very solid. You can also use the X button for Samus's melee counterattack on enemies, which is really cool. All in all, the controls in Metroid Samus Returns are great, very fluid, and I really have no issues with them. The main gameplay of Metroid Samus Returns revolves around Samus hunting down and fighting various Metroids throughout the planet of SR388 and exterminating them. Now, throughout the game, if you know Metroid, you know Samus has this little bowling ball sort of form that she can turn into, which you will do a lot throughout the game. In fact, you will be going under walls, you'll be climbing up walls, you'll be going into even little caves with the morph ball, you'll be bombing secret entrances, and of course Samus has her mainstay like the power beam, the super missiles, and what have you. Now, the game provides a nice mix of non-linearity and progression. While this game is no Breath of the Wild in terms of non-linearity, there are definite places where you will not be able to go to until you have killed a certain amount of Metroids. You still have sort of the option to be able to battle these Metroids within the confines of your particular area in just about whatever order you'd like. While the game's enemy variety is minimal, it somehow doesn't get boring, sort of taking a page from Breath of the Wild of having minimal enemies but having quality over quantity. It manages to keep things interesting because the scenarios and environments in which you fight each Metroid are drastically different. There aren't too many actual bosses in the game, but more 40 sort of separate mini-bosses, and of course a few final bosses, because I don't want to spoil the final boss of the game. Now, Metroid Samus Returns also has new abilities included. This is the Ion ability, which is a new feature introduced to this game. Now, the Ion ability is essentially things that give Samus temporary power-ups, like it'll increase her arm cannon strength, it'll allow you to especially scan walls and areas that might be bombable, sort of taking cues from Metroid Prime. Now, I for one actually really like this feature, as I actually feel like it streamlines the gameplay, and it means you, generally speaking, won't get stuck to the point of getting super frustrated. So this game really does take every precaution to really update the original Metroid 2 game, and it almost really does feel like a new game. I just also have to talk about the combat in this game. Now, for the most part, it is like regular Metroid run-and-gun combat, but it also includes this new melee attack, which is absolutely sick. It definitely has a cost-benefit analysis, enemies will fly at you or jump at you, and it's up to you whether or not you want to take them apart at a distance, which will take a little bit longer, or if you want to use your melee attack, in which case Samus will sort of slap them, which will stun them and deal a lot of damage, and then you can take them out with just a few missiles or what have you. Now, this is really effective against Metroids, and it also just includes some really cool animations. It almost feels a little bit like the Flurry Rush from Breath of the Wild, although not quite that extreme, but it's still really cool, and I absolutely just love the gameplay to this game, and it's so fun just to do all these moves. It really feels like how Metroidvania should. Simple, but also very complex and elegant. Now, the game does have a few added bosses in the game, which for the most part are pretty forgettable, with the exception of the final boss, which forces Samus to utilize all her weapons, power-ups, and abilities that she has gained throughout the course of the game. The difficulty itself, for the most part, is manageable, even for newcomers. There are a few exceptions to the game where the difficulty does seem a little unbalanced, that sort of take away from the overall pacing of the game. Overall, the gameplay in Metroid Samus Returns is fantastic, and they truly did nail it. Metroid Samus Returns is an outstanding game, but it isn't perfect. Now, while the pacing for the game is very rock solid for the most part, there are a few issues, specifically a few annoying backtracking sequences, and one boss battle that really bogs down the game for me. Now, the boss battle in question is about 3/4 of the way through the game, and don't get me wrong, I love a challenging boss battle, and Super Metroid pulled that off perfectly, but Super Metroid had bosses that were very challenging, but also didn't overstay their welcome. This boss did both of those. It was just an incredibly unfun, tedious boss battle that just made me want to pull my hair out. I fought it at least 12 times, I swear, and there's just so many stages to this fight. There's 3 stages, and it's this giant robot that you have to just really challenges your reflexes, but not in really a fair way, because it always sort of changes its tactics. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm complaining about the challenge, but it's just the way in which it's handled, I think, could have been a lot better, a lot more cut down. It really wouldn't have taken away from the challenge or the enjoyment of the game, because the boss, it's just not fun. And it just, God, it's like that one blot out of an otherwise amazing game that just really just drives me nuts. Now I want to talk about a little bit about the ending itself, and I don't mean the final boss battle, which is really good. The ending itself left a little bit to be desired. Sure, it led into Super Metroid a little bit, but I would have liked to see just a little bit more connection to the game, as well as a little bit more connection to just Metroid lore as a whole. Now, the game is light on story, which is fine, but I thought Nintendo could have stepped it up a notch just a little bit. Now, the other big issue I have with this game is the darn amiibos. Now, it's great that the game has hard mode, it's great that the game has multiple hard modes, but having to spend so much extra money for different amiibo to be able to really get every little conceivable thing you need with the game, it's just gotten out of control, Nintendo. You just need to give us the whole game in one package like you used to do. It's just, I don't know, it just really bugs me that I'm not going to buy all these amiibo, and some of them are going to get taken by scalpers, and it's just like, ah! You making us buy this to fully enjoy the game. Why? And like, I know all companies do this nowadays. It's sort of a modern gaming thing. I guess that's what they call progress, but it still just bugs me to no end that Nintendo's jumped on that bandwagon. Metroid Samus Returns really has me believe that the Metroid series is here to stay. It feels like only yesterday I was questioning whether or not I would see one of my favorite franchises ever return. And I'm not talking about Metroid Prime Federation 4. But now we have a Grand Slam, brand new, well, kind of brand new, it is a remake, Metroid game on the Nintendo 3DS, and I'm so happy to say that this game lived up to the hype and then some. Like, I was getting excited after reading the reviews, and I'm so excited now to see where the Metroid franchise goes further from here, and I really, really hope this game sells well. So that's why I would encourage anyone that owns a 3DS to absolutely get this game. Of course, I recommend it anyway because it's a great game, but even if not, if you've never played a Metroid game, I'd highly recommend checking this out and then playing the other Metroid games. I'm happy to give Metroid Samus Returns a 4.75 out of 5. I can't thank you guys enough for watching my video reviews. I'm going to keep doing these. I'm finally in my new place. It's still a bit of a mess, but I tried to get my setup as best I could. And I do want to emphasize that Metroid Samus Returns is a great game, and you should definitely pick this game up if you haven't already. It definitely is worth the buy, and it's one of the best 3DS games I have played. With all that said, just have a great one, guys. Peace out.